no tools.
What do you think about that? I also feel like that there needs to be some type of organization for openness.
I mean, I would think of it, and I would think of it in terms of, and this is sort of what I was trying to get about, talking about the destruction of property relations as organization of our social lives, is that there has to be some organization or even institutions of the common, like that the common itself is not, and that it seems to me has to be invented, or rather, it is the kind of thing that we can recognize examples of already existing. Yeah. That it's not that without property we are anything goes, like I said.
It's just a changing of view.
No, it's not a change of view. Destroying property is destroying property. I mean, destroying property is a big fucking deal. Okay. I mean, I guess I'm trying to give the less economic examples. The economic side of it is a rather, but it seems rather clear. I mean,
the horse example worked for me.
Okay, good.
Can you translate that into a realistic economic example?
Well, the kind of things I was talking about, like the production of ideas, the production of affects, the production of information, images, these are all things that we can recognize experiments of and actual experiences of the organization of their production outside of the property relations. And like I was saying, it's increasingly the property relations and the expropriation of value is increasingly external to that production. When you think about, like the production of ideas, it's not that capital intervenes directly. Like, okay, here two very different level examples in terms of the kinds of indigenous knowledges I was talking about before. Like that classic example that I sort of referred to that has been object of court cases in India is that there's been an indigenous knowledge indigenous knowledge was produced that this certain seed from a neem tree, if ground up, is a natural pesticide. So Monsanto patents that knowledge and not only sells it, but then prosecutes for violation of copyright the people who have been using it for 1,000 years. So it's not that the production of that indigenous knowledge is organized outside of property relations. The same way I would say at the other side, but I won't go through this more about how scientific knowledge is produced. It's generally produced outside of property relations, and then patents and copyrights comes on top of it. So it's that kind of thing that it's not, in a way, the organization of the common or certain institutions of these productions of the commons seem to me to already exist in nucleo or sometimes in practice, and that politics could exist on the basis of that and exploit it. Maybe that's where I was going.
Okay, number two.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the talk, Michael. It was really stimulating.
Thanks.
My question is going to be about the problem of agency. We know in industrial capitalism, the hegemonic political form of sovereignty was the national state, and the political hegemonic form for struggle for communism, for the struggle against private property, was the party, especially the Leninist one. So now, in post-industrial, immaterial capitalism, we know, because Antonio Negri and you told us, that the empire is the new form of sovereignty, and maybe the multitude is a new subject for change things, a new political subject. We know, because you told us this night, that the common should be the economic and political regime of communism. My question is, do you think we need a new agency, a new form of political organization, a new tool, a new element in order to fight capitalism, in order to fight for the commons as a political regime, in order to make this system disappear?
Right. I mean, exactly, and I don't, but I think I'm sort of going to defer the question slightly, because, and so like what I was saying at a certain point at the beginning is that it seems to me one can at least divide two halves of this question. The one is that I really mostly focused on, I sense, the question of political economy. What are the conditions under which people produce, and what are therefore the tools or elements which present itself? There would be the second moment that would be not the critique of political economy, but the proposition of organization that you're saying. And I think that should start from I mean, you're right that Tony and I have said a lot of things about this. I think that such thinking about organization, political organization, what form of political organization which would either be the party today or substitute for the way the party has functioned previously, would have to be based on the conditions that exist. Like that start thinking from the results of the critique of political economy, like looking at, like it seems to me useless to say, at least, before the industrial proletariat has been the leader of the vanguard party, therefore today we need to look for some industrial proletariat that's going to lead the party. Rather, at least this analysis would suggest, I mean I think this is a result of it, that we have to look at what is it that people do today, what is the dominant forms of production, etc., and try to base the notion on that. I mean, part of the reason for me writing it this way and approaching it this way is I've been intrigued and not entirely in agreement of the proposals of communism by friends of the European Graduate School, Alain Badiou and Slavoj Žižek. And in many ways, they propose a Lenin without Marx. They propose a communism of political decision, and not a communism of the critique of political economy. So that I'm, in a way, what I was doing today is trying to say, no, in fact, you have to start with Marx. You have to return from Lenin to Marx. And then maybe you could arrive at Lenin. What I mean, the obvious code word, sort of like, you have to start with a recognition of what people do and what subjectivities are produced today, and then on the basis of that, think about political organization, the construction of political decisions. But that seems to me to have to come first. Does that make sense, Pablo? Yeah.
Okay, just a short one, because there's a political party now that is the Pirate Party, and they just managed to get 2 representatives in the European Parliament.
The Pirate Party?
Yes.
Good.
And it's coming up from peer-to-peer file-sharing exercise.
Yeah.
That is a kind of, public domain without declaring it public domain, and it's just completely a file-sharing thing.
Right.
And this is a good maybe.
Right. No, that definitely is a good instance of it.
Do we have any lady who wants to say something to
Okay.
Okay, please.
So in one strategy that's been adopted in Canada recently is to simply say, with the carbon tax,
right,
we'll adopt this analogy and we'll say these resources, natural resources, have a worth, which we'll identify, we'll agree
right
on this. And once that basic agreement is being formed, that though we may have not, we may have had the liberty of not having to acknowledge that before, those days are gone. And once then that acknowledgement is being made, then there can be some negotiation or some trading, this carbon trade.
Right.
So,
like one thing you're pointing to that seems like super important to me, and is something I would like to try to figure out, which is, like I said, that there are at least 2 notions of the common which are, in fact, have different characteristics. What I was calling and then refusing that name of the natural common, the common of the earth, which is threatened by this, and then this notion of the artificial common. And one of the at least important differences is, whereas, as I was trying to insist on at length, these notions of the artificial common, images, ideas, etc., are at least relatively reproducible, whereas the earth is limited. I mean, so that the rhetorics and thinking in these 2 domains is quite different. I think that there ought to be, and the notion of the common seems to me to find a way for bringing the 2 together, at least having a kind of dialogue about this. I guess I'm thinking particular, but this is from my own interests. I'm thinking about this UN climate summit in Copenhagen in December, in which it seems at least, a next deployment for a variety of social movements, but that will bring together a variety of ecological movements and anti-capitalist movements, or movements that have been struggling about forms of globalization, which have not particularly well communicated in the past. And I think partly because of this difference between these two notions of the common and the different qualities of them. But it seems to me an occasion for trying to think their relationship. And that was the first part. But the second thing, this is my hesitation now about the climate, about the carbon tax, but then you should say to me, well, what's your damn idea, Mike? But the difficulty is it seems to be translating into property and things that were not previously property, and assuming, so that making carbon production a form of property and then trading it. And what it's assuming is that once we establish a market of property values, that will solve the problem. And at least my first skepticism is about the rationality of markets that I think that such notions is assuming. But I say that, in both of these points, it's something that I haven't quite figured out yet, and I think I should. But because in order to me give that critique of carbon tax, which is a lot better than what we have now, I ought to be able to have an alternative proposal that doesn't rely on property, but I don't quite yet. But that was my first reaction to it.
Marie?
I think that what's interesting at the moment is that there is this kind of drive toward